They looked me straight in the eye and said the words that shattered me. Dad, you're just dead weight now. Stop clinging to us. Stop wasting our time. I never thought I'd hear such venom from the children I raised, the ones I worked 2 jobs for, the ones who once clung to my hands when they were little. My son Daniel's voice was sharp, almost mocking, while my daughter Emily just crossed her arms and refused to look at me. I remember standing in the middle of Daniel's grand living room, the walls decorated with expensive paintings and shelves lined with books no one read, while I held a bag of groceries I had brought to help out. But instead of thanks, I was told I didn't belong. You're old, you've done enough, just step aside and stop bothering us. Emily finally said, and that was it, my children, my own flesh and blood, discarded me like I was a burden. What they didn't know, what they never even bothered to ask, was that in my quiet, ordinary life, I had quietly become the legal controller of an inheritance worth $30 million. Money they thought belonged to them. Money they thought they could push me aside to get. Money that came with secrets they couldn't imagine. That night, as I walked out of Daniel's house, clutching the bag of groceries I had brought for them, I promised myself one thing. I would teach them the lesson of their lives. They thought I was powerless. They thought I was just an aging man they could bully. They thought wrong. And when the lawyer revealed the truth, their greedy smiles froze, their voices stuttered, and they finally realized who really held the power in this family. But by then, it was too late. I was never a man of luxury, but I always made sure my children had what they needed. When my wife, Margaret, passed away 10 years ago, I promised myself I would be both father and mother to Daniel and Emily. I cooked, I cleaned, I made sure birthdays were celebrated. I never remarried because I thought giving them my full devotion was the least I could do. Daniel grew up ambitious. He became a businessman, always talking about investments, deals, and expansion. Emily, softer in nature at first, studied literature, but later married a wealthy man who opened doors for her she never had to earn. To me, they were still my children. To them, I was just fading background. Things started small. Daniel would forget to return my calls. Emily would roll her eyes when I repeated stories from the past. Claire, my daughter-in-law, was the first to show open disdain. She would sigh whenever I came over, like I was a stray dog wandering into her spotless living room. At first, I brushed it off. They were busy. They were young. Maybe I was too sentimental. But the truth was, the bond that once held us together was unraveling, thread by painful thread. One evening, I overheard Claire whispering to Emily in the kitchen, "Why does he keep coming around? Doesn't he realize he's just in the way?" Those words stung, but I stayed silent. My hands shook as I pretended to sip my tea. I told myself they didn't mean it. I told myself I was imagining it, but deep down I knew something was shifting. And then, one day, Daniel invited me over with papers in hand. It was a Saturday afternoon. Daniel had called me over, saying he wanted my help with a few documents. I thought it was something simple, maybe advice, maybe just company. But when I arrived, he had already set the dining table with a neat stack of papers, a pen placed deliberately on top. "Dad," he began, his tone carefully casual, "this is just a small formality, nothing complicated, just some property management stuff. It'll make things easier for everyone." I frowned, adjusting my glasses as I picked up the first page. Legal jargon, too many words crammed together. I didn't understand much, but I knew enough to feel uneasy. "What property?" I asked. Daniel smiled, but it wasn't warm. "Oh, just the house, a few assets here and there. You know, things you're not really using. It'll help us manage everything more smoothly, less stress for you." Emily, sitting across the table, avoided my gaze. She just fiddled with her phone, as if she wasn't part of this. I looked at Daniel again. "And why do you need my signature?" He leaned forward, his voice dropping lower. "Because technically, you still control some of it. But Dad, let's be honest. You're getting older. Wouldn't it be better if we handled things for you?" There it was, not even sugar-coated. In his eyes, I wasn't capable anymore. Something inside me tightened. My whole life, I had been careful, saving every penny, investing wisely, keeping track of every paper. I wasn't stupid, and I wasn't about to hand over my future so easily. "I'll take these papers to Mr. Harrison," I said firmly, That name made Daniel flinch. Mr. Harrison, our family lawyer, had been with me for decades. He knew every detail of my estate. Daniel's smile faltered for just a second. Dad, that's not necessary. Emily cut in, finally speaking. Why complicate things? Just sign it. We'll take care of you. Take care of me, as if I was already an invalid, as if I was nothing but a burden. I put the pen down and slid the papers back across the table. No. After that day, the atmosphere shifted completely. My children were no longer subtle. Daniel began speaking to me like I was a child who needed managing. Emily grew colder, her voice clipped whenever she spoke to me. One evening, I came over with a casserole dish, an old family recipe Margaret used to make. I thought it might bring back good memories. Instead, I walked in on Claire muttering under her breath as she scrubbed the counter. He just doesn't know when to quit, does he? Always hanging around like a ghost. Emily laughed softly. We'll sort it out soon. Once everything's signed, he won't have to worry about a thing. I froze in the hallway, casserole still warm in my hands. They were planning. They weren't just impatient. They wanted me out of the picture entirely. That night, lying awake in my small house, I replayed their words over and over. I thought of Margaret, of the life we had built, of the sacrifices we had made, and I realized something bitter. My children no longer saw me as their father. They saw me as an obstacle. The next time Daniel called, his voice was sharper. Dad, we need to finalize things. Stop dragging this out. You're making it harder than it has to be. I told him no again, and in that silence that followed, I felt the line finally snap. Whatever was left of the bond we shared, it broke right there. After the papers incident, I noticed the invitations became less frequent. I wasn't asked to come by just to visit anymore. Instead, when I did hear from them, it was always tied to some formality, some discussion about money or the future, rarely about me. One evening, Daniel called and said, Dad, come over for dinner. Let's smooth things out. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that maybe my children had realized they'd been harsh. So I put on my best shirt, shaved, and even picked up a bottle of wine on the way. Margaret used to say that family dinners could heal wounds. I hoped she was right. When I walked in, Claire greeted me with that thin, practiced smile, the kind that never reached her eyes. Daniel was already pouring drinks. Emily sat at the table, scrolling through her phone as usual. Dinner started pleasantly enough. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, small talk about the weather. But underneath it all, I felt the tension. Their eyes darted to one another, their words too careful, and then it began. Daniel set down his fork and leaned back in his chair. Dad, we've been thinking. It's time you stopped worrying about all those assets you're clinging to. You've worked hard your whole life. Let us handle it now. Emily chimed in, her tone deceptively sweet. We just want you to relax, enjoy your golden years without stress. Isn't that what Mom would have wanted? My heart clenched at the mention of Margaret, using her memory like a bargaining chip. I placed my fork down slowly. Relaxing doesn't mean handing over everything I've built. Claire, who had been quiet until now, scoffed. Honestly, this is ridiculous. You're hoarding things you don't even use, houses you don't live in, investments you don't understand. You're just holding everyone back. Holding everyone back, I stared at her, and for a moment I could almost see the mask slip. The greed burning in her eyes, the table went silent. I excused myself early, leaving my untouched glass of wine behind. The weeks that followed were colder. Emily stopped visiting altogether. Daniel only called when he wanted to discuss arrangements. Claire was the worst. Her disdain for me grew so sharp, she didn't bother to hide it anymore. One Saturday, I dropped by unannounced. Old habits die hard. I had baked a pie, the kind Margaret used to make when the children were little. But when Claire opened the door, she didn't smile. Oh, it's you? She blocked the doorway with her body. Daniel's busy. I just came to see my son, I said softly. She sighed, her arms crossed. Do you ever stop? He's got real responsibilities. He doesn't have time to babysit you every weekend. Don't you get it? You don't belong here anymore. Her words hit me like a slap. My throat tightened, but I steadied my voice. I am his father. Claire rolled her eyes, and, That doesn't mean you get to drag us down with your paranoia. You're old. Step aside already. We'll take care of things. Before I could respond, Daniel appeared behind her. His expression was stern, not warm. Dad, maybe it's better if you call before you come. Things are hectic. I nodded slowly, pie still in my hands, and walked away without stepping inside. The pie grew cold as I drove back home, tears blurring my vision. That night, I stared at the ceiling, replaying every word. You don't belong here. The cruelty in Claire's voice. The indifference in Daniel's. The silence from Emily. For the first time, I wondered if I had truly lost them. Mr. Harrison, my lawyer and longtime friend, called me unexpectedly. I hear you've been under pressure, he said. His voice was calm, steady, the kind of voice that had guided me through buying my first house, setting up investments, even Margaret's passing. I sighed. They want me to sign everything over. They act like I'm in the way, like I'm nothing. There was a pause, then his words came firm. You are not nothing, and you must remember, you hold control of the estate. Margaret and I work to ensure it, that $30 million fortune. It's under your name. They can't touch it without your consent. My heart skipped. Even though I knew it, hearing it again grounded me. But Harrison, they think it's theirs already. Then let them think that, he said. Their masks will fall soon enough, and when they do, you'll be ready. That night, I lay in bed with a strange mix of sorrow and strength. My children might see me as weak, as a burden, but they didn't know the truth. The control was still mine, and with it, the chance to teach them a lesson they would never forget. It was a Thursday evening when I decided to stop by Daniel's house. I told myself I'd just drop off some old family photographs I had found in the attic, but in truth, I think I wanted to feel like a father again, even if just for a moment. When I got there, the house was lit but strangely quiet. I let myself in. Daniel had given me a spare key years ago. From the hallway, I heard voices drifting from the living room. I froze. He's being stubborn. Daniel's voice muttered. I thought he'd just sign. The old man doesn't even know what half of it means. Claire's sharp tone followed. Then make him. He won't last forever, Daniel. Once he's gone, everything falls to us anyway. But we can't wait that long. We need control now. My stomach twisted. Emily's voice chimed in, quieter but cutting. Maybe we should push harder. Dad's not. Well, he's not as sharp as he used to be. If we tell him it's for medical costs or something urgent, he'll believe us. The words pierced me. My own children plotting to deceive me, to trick me like some fool. I stepped back, heart racing, and accidentally brushed against the side table in the hall. A vase wobbled and fell, shattering loudly. The voices stopped. Footsteps hurried toward me. Daniel appeared, surprise flashing across his face before hardening into suspicion. Dad, what are you doing here? I clutched the old photo album tighter, my voice barely steady. I came to give you this. Daniel eyed me, then the broken vase. You should call next time. We were having a private talk. I nodded slowly, excused myself, and walked out. But my chest burned with betrayal. The following week, Daniel invited me over again. This time, the papers were back on the table. But now his tone was harder. Dad, we need to finalize this. Stop dragging it out. It's embarrassing. I stayed seated, calm but firm. I'm not signing anything. Emily's face flushed red. Why are you being so difficult? Don't you trust us? Trust is earned. I said quietly, and lately, I haven't felt much of it. Claire slammed her hand against the table. This is ridiculous. You're holding everything hostage just because you're too stubborn to admit you can't handle it anymore. I looked at them. My son, my daughter-in-law. And for the first time, I didn't see family. I saw strangers with greed in their eyes. Daniel leaned closer, his voice low but laced with anger. You're old, Dad. You don't even realize how much of a burden you are. We're doing this for you, whether you like it or not. Emily's voice cracked, but her words cut deepest of all. You're just dead weight. Dead weight. The room spun. My hands shook, but I steadied them on the armrest. My heart screamed with pain, but I forced myself to look each of them in the eye. No, I said, I will not sign. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Their stares burned holes into me, full of resentment. For the first time, I felt like they truly wished I didn't exist. I stood, grabbed my coat, and walked out without looking back. In the days that followed, I didn't answer their calls. My phone buzzed with messages, some angry, some pleading. But I ignored them. Instead, I met with Mr. Harrison. We sat in his office, surrounded by shelves of leather, bound books, and the faint smell of old paper. They're circling me like vultures. I confessed, calling me names, pressuring me. They think I'll cave. Harrison leaned back, his eyes sharp. Then we'll remind them who holds the power. I'll call for a formal family meeting. No tricks, no papers on the side. Everything will be on the record. I hesitated. Will it hurt them? He placed a hand on mine. Sometimes the truth hurts, but it's the only way to open their eyes. That night, I sat in my old house alone, the echoes of Margaret's laughter in the walls. I whispered to her picture, "I'm sorry." I tried to hold us together, but they've left me no choice. I knew the storm was coming, and this time I would be ready. The call came from Mr. Harrison a week later. "It's time," he said. "I've scheduled a family meeting. Everyone needs to be present." When I arrived at his office, my children were already there. Daniel sat stiffly in his suit, tapping his foot impatiently. Emily avoided eye contact, her lips pressed tight. Claire looked annoyed, her arms folded across her chest. Finally, Daniel muttered as I entered. "We've wasted enough time." Mr. Harrison stood, his presence commanding. "Please sit. Today we'll clear up all matters regarding Mr. Thompson's estate." The word estate seemed to flick a switch. Daniel straightened, his eyes sharp with hunger. Emily leaned forward. Claire smirked as if she had already won. I sat quietly, hands folded in my lap. My heart pounded, but my face showed nothing. Harrison began, his voice calm but firm. "Over the years, Mr. Thompson has built and preserved a substantial fortune. This includes properties, investments, and assets that total just over $30 million. The room froze. Daniel's jaw dropped. Emily gasped softly. Claire's smirk widened into a grin. 30 million. The number hung heavy in the air, and in that silence, I could feel the weight of their greed pressing down on me. I glanced at each of them. My children, who had called me a burden, were now staring at me like predators spotting prey. Mr. Harrison pulled out a folder and placed it on the table. According to Margaret's will and the legal arrangements made years ago, control of the estate does not pass to Daniel or Emily. Not yet. Daniel blinked. "What do you mean, not yet?" Harrison's eyes narrowed. "It means your father is the sole controller of all $30 million. Every property, every account, every share remains under his authority until the day he chooses otherwise." Emily's mouth fell open. That can't be right." Claire scoffed, leaning forward. "So what? He's old. He won't last forever. Then it all comes to them anyway." Harrison's gaze hardened. "Actually, no. There's a stipulation. If Mr. Thompson deems his children unworthy, if they fail to treat him with respect and care, he has the full right to redirect the inheritance elsewhere." The words struck like thunder. Daniel paled. Emily shook her head in disbelief. Claire's smile collapsed into fury. I finally spoke, my voice steady. "You thought I was weak. You thought I was dead weight. But all this time I held the key, not you." The room went silent. For the first time in years, I saw fear in their eyes. Not of me, but of losing the fortune they thought was theirs. The silence didn't last long. Daniel shot up from his chair, his voice sharp. "This is insane. Dad can't handle this kind of responsibility. He's too old." Emily grabbed his arm, whispering, "Stop." But her eyes betrayed the same fear. Claire leaned forward, venom dripping from her words. "You can't just dangle this in front of us and then threaten to take it away. That money is ours. It always has been." Harrison's voice cut through the chaos. "No, Mrs. Thompson. It was earned and preserved by him, and it will remain his until he says otherwise." I stood slowly, letting my gaze pass over each of them. "You called me dead weight. You pushed me aside. You tried to trick me into signing everything over. But you never asked me what I wanted. You never showed me respect. You only saw the money." Emily's eyes filled with tears. Daniel clenched his fists. Claire glared at me with pure hatred. And then, with a steady breath, I delivered the final blow. I will not leave a single penny to those who treat me like a burden. If that means giving it all to charity, so be it. You've made your choice, and now I've made mine." The room erupted. Daniel shouted. Claire hissed curses under her breath. Emily cried quietly in the corner, but I felt calm, calmer than I had in years. For the first time, they saw me not as a weak old man, but as the one who held their future in his hands. After that meeting at Mr. Harrison's office, I went home with a strange calmness. The anger and the pain were still there, yes, but beneath it all I felt lighter. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of my children's judgment. I wasn't afraid of their demands or their schemes. I had faced them, looked them in the eye, and stood my ground. The following days were eerily quiet. No calls from Daniel, no messages from Emily, not even a passive, aggressive remark from Claire. The silence itself was its own answer. They had nothing left to say once the truth was out. In that quiet, I began to live again. I started attending community gatherings at the senior center. I found old friends who welcomed me warmly. One neighbor, a kind man named George, began inviting me to play chess on Sunday mornings. For the first time in years, laughter returned to my home. I even began tending Margaret's old garden. Her roses, long neglected, began to bloom again. I felt her presence in every petal, every breeze that passed through the yard, and I realized I didn't need Daniel or Emily's approval to feel like a man, or a father, or a person worthy of love. I had been strong all along. I had simply forgotten it. Word traveled quickly in the family circle. Cousins, distant relatives, even old friends began whispering about what had happened at Mr. Harrison's office. My children's greed was no longer a secret. Daniel's business, once thriving, began to stumble. Investors pulled out after rumors spread that he had tried to forcefully take over his father's estate. No one wanted to tie themselves to a man whose reputation now reeked of desperation. Emily's marriage grew shaky. Her husband had married her under the impression that her family's wealth was guaranteed. When he learned the truth, that I controlled everything and that Emily's behavior had put her inheritance at risk, his affection soured. Their lavish dinners turned into cold silences. Eventually he left, and Claire, well, she was the loudest in her resentment. She blamed me for everything. She whispered poison into Daniel's ear, feeding his anger. But the more she raged, the more obvious it became. She hadn't loved my son for who he was. She loved him for what she thought he would inherit. Their greed devoured them from the inside out. Meanwhile, I remained steady. Every month, I met with Mr. Harrison. We secured the estate in a way that ensured Daniel and Emily could not touch a cent without my blessing. I directed portions of the money toward causes Margaret had loved. Scholarships for underprivileged children, donations to the local hospital, community projects. I watched my children's fortunes crumble, not because I destroyed them, but because their own greed consumed them. It was Emily who showed up first weeks later. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her hands trembling as she stood at my doorstep. "Dad, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. I was just scared, her voice cracked. Behind her, Daniel appeared, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. His suit was wrinkled, his confidence gone. Claire wasn't with him. For a long time, none of us spoke. I studied their faces, searching for sincerity. For once, I saw shame, not entitlement, not greed. Shame, I never wanted your money. I said quietly, I wanted your respect. But when you chose money over me, you lost both. Daniel swallowed hard. Is it too late? I looked at him, then at Emily. They were my children, my blood, but they had wounded me in ways I never thought possible. And though forgiveness might one day come, trust would not return so easily. It's never too late to change, I said slowly, but it is too late for you to think that my love, or my fortune, was yours to demand. They lowered their heads. For the first time, they had no words. I closed the door gently, not in anger, but in finality. Behind me, Margaret's roses bloomed in the evening light, and I felt her presence once more. Respect matters more than money, because money can vanish, but respect is what makes love endure. My children learned that too late, but the lesson will stay with me forever.